Your victory is in your hand. God has already given you whatever you need to overcome what you are fighting. And your victory is not just for you, it's for others too. I'm so glad that you are here today. I want to encourage you that your victory is in your hand, that God's already given you what you need. The Lord showed me this in the story of David and Goliath, which might be a story that you're familiar with, but maybe not. David was a shepherd boy, and don't know his age, but he was still a teenager. And he had 7 older brothers. There's speculation that they were maybe half brothers because he got overlooked and things, but he was the little brother that was left out with the sheep. And the army of Israel had been standing in a face-off with the Philistine army for 40 days. The Philistines had giants, and they had a giant in particular. Goliath was their champion, and he would come out day after day and say, "Send a man to fight me. We'll have just a 1-to-1 combat. Whoever wins the battle, we can save all this bloodshed." Israel didn't have giants, so they weren't sending anyone out. They were running and hiding every time this giant came out. Every time this giant came out and taunted them, they were just running away. And this had been going on for 40 days. And David's older brothers were part of the army. So David's father, Jesse, said, "Hey, go check on your brothers, take them some food." So David shows up at the time that Goliath comes out and makes his boast that he can beat any of them and they can just have this over with. And David is like, why is he still doing this? Like, how long has this been going on? And so the men are like, whoever beats him gets this prize money and the king's daughter and all this stuff. And David's, so who do I talk to? And his older brothers make fun of him. They're like, who do you think you are? Like, why did you leave the sheep? Your few little sheep out in the wilderness. Why are you even here? You're just being a pain. You're just trying to get attention. And David's, no, he's defying my God. This is not okay. So eventually he gets to the king, and the king's, I can't let you do this. You're a boy. I'm the king. Like, he's been fighting and doing battle since before you were born. But David says, no, this needs to happen. Like, he's defying God. He needs to go down. The Philistines are supposed to be destroyed. Like, that was part of our promise in taking this land. They have defiled God for generations. They're supposed to be wiped out. So Saul's finally, okay, I'll send you out in my armor. Saul was a head and shoulders taller than everyone else, and David's still a teen, so the armor didn't fit. It didn't work. And David's, no, I can't go out there in your armor. God helped me kill a bear and a lion when they were coming after my sheep, and I'm just as confident that God will take care of this Philistine. He took care of the bear, he took care of the lion, he'll take care of this. And I'm going to use what I have in my hand, what I already know. So he took his shepherd's staff, and he took his sling, and he headed out toward the Philistine. And I just heard this in a sermon yesterday, actually, that the stream was more than halfway across the valley towards the Philistines. So he went all that way completely unarmed, and he stopped and he picked up 5 stones. The water stopped flowing. It's a whole nother story. But the priests were told to pick up stones and make an altar, and there were stones of remembrance. So David is picking up these stones, and I'm sure as he was picking them up, he's like, God killed the lion, God killed the bear. This one's for Goliath. This one's for, I don't know if they're his sons or his brothers. There was at least 4 more giants. And he's picking up his stones, knowing that he's going to defeat Goliath. He told Saul that he was going to cut off Goliath's head, and he doesn't even have a sword. He's going down with a shepherd's staff and a sling and picking up rocks along the way. So he was so confident. This is happening. I went way more into that story than I intended to, but maybe you needed to hear it. But the idea is that David knew I've been out here with the sheep doing mundane, boring stuff that people make fun of and don't think is valuable. But in that, God prepared him for his destiny, prepared him to take out Goliath and eventually the rest of the giants and expand the kingdom of Israel, I think, more than any other king. But he did it while he was out there minding the sheep. And in that time, he got to know God. Whereas there's just the everyday, boring, feed the sheep, make sure they don't get stuck, make sure they have water, probably help with lambing. And if you're a mom, maybe that's dishes and laundry and homework and just like the stuff that never seems to end and nobody really seems to appreciate all that much. That's where he got to know God so well that he wasn't afraid to take out a giant that could have been 3 or 4 feet taller than him and trained for battle and armored and all of this stuff. He knew how good of a shot he was. And he knew he didn't have to get anywhere near that Goliath's sword or spear. He didn't have to get anywhere near him. He just needed to get in range to send his sling. And I've read that like the stones would be, slingers were like snipers of the day because they were out of reach of everything and they could send those rocks fast enough that it was like a bullet. And so it was what was in his hand. The king didn't understand it. The army didn't understand it. Goliath didn't understand it. He was making fun of him all the way out. You're sending a boy out here? What are you doing? But David's confidence was in his God and God defending his name and in the skills that he had developed while he was out there just spending time with sheep, just doing the job that God had given him at the time. And I look at that in my own life and the time changing diapers and cleaning up and making food and cleaning up again. And all of that can seem hard as a mom, as a young mom. But it was in that season that I pressed into learning how to hear God's voice for myself, learning how to have conversations with him where I get to talk to him, but then I get to stop and listen to him speaking to me. And that changes everything. And getting to see that doing small things well pays off. Training my children to listen and do chores and be kind to each other and all the things that was just like, are they ever going to get this on certain days? To see that now the oldest 3 are adults and they're raising their own kids and they're amazing people. And he used what was in my hand. Like he's using my children to make an impact. I can look at my story and go, God provided here, and he's so faithful. He spoke to me here, and he taught me to listen here, and he's so faithful. So looking at what has he already taught me through whatever life has brought me to, whether those are practical skills like throwing a stone in a sling, or the spiritual skills of David wrote so many of the Psalms when he wrote some of them as a teenager, and he continued to write them because he developed that relationship. So I would challenge you to look and see what things, whether it's practical or spiritual or relational, what has God already taught you? What's already in your hand that can bring you to victory in the season that you're in? David saw Goliath. He's clearly the enemy that has to go down. I can use my sling and the power of God's name to take him down. I don't feel like the giants are always quite so obvious, but maybe they are. Maybe you're in a season where there's a cancer or a huge debt or something else that like, nope, I have a very clearly identified giant right here. So what has God already put in your hand? What are your stones of remembrance that you can be like, God did this for me and God did this for me, so I have no doubt that he'll overcome this giant for me as well. And I would love for you to leave that in the comments. Let me know what's already in your hand, what giant you're facing, so I can be praying for you, praying with you, and be encouraged that your victory is in your hand